What was Mark Hoffman's fate? Where is Lawrence Gordon now? And just where is John Kramer's body? That's what I'm talking about today with special guest Zach from CZsWorld. Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies, old and new. A lot of you guys have been asking for another collab between myself and Zach ever since we released the payment episode last year on his channel CZsWorld. Well, you asked and I delivered. As for today's episode, I am joined by the professor himself, Zach from CZsWorld. Zach and I recently rewatched all of the Saw movies in preparation for the release of Saw X in October. Hi guys, I'm just popping in here with a quick disclaimer that Zach and I researched and filmed this episode days before the release of the announcement of Saw X's new release date and synopsis. So when we filmed this and when we're talking about these unanswered questions, we had no idea what the synopsis of Saw X was going to be or where in the Saw franchise it would fit in terms of timeline. So I have taken out some of the content where we're talking about Saw X because it is just completely pointless now. But I have left some references to Saw X in because we had fun trying to figure out our own ideas and own answers to these questions, and I hope that it will remain fun for you guys. Because remember, just because we now know that Saw X won't answer any of these questions, it doesn't mean that future Saw films won't. Either way, we had great fun filming this episode, and I hope you guys still do, despite the fact that some of what we're saying does not fit with Saw X. Okay, take it away past Sarah and Zach. You poor fools. And we both realised that while most questions and loose ends were tied up in the final chapter, by the end of the film and after the release of 2017's Jigsaw and 2021's Spiral from the Book of Saw, we were still left with multiple questions. Saw was first released in 2004 and it all began with one man, a man diagnosed with terminal cancer who, after discovering a new outlook on life and its value, tried to force his new philosophy on other people through placing them in deadly traps. Over the years, we watched as he added numbers to his team, including Amanda Young, Mark Hoffman, and Dr. Lawrence Gordon. We watched the police department try to find and stop Jigsaw, but even after his death, his work was carried on by his disciples. Most notably, Mark Hoffman and Lawrence Gordon, and Hoffman seemingly meets his fate at the end of Saw 7 for going against Jigsaw's protocol. But many fans insist he could have survived that final trap. And that is the first question we are going to be talking about in today's episode. So, do you think Hoffman could have survived his fate?
So here's my thing about Hoffman. Just from purely like a storytelling standpoint, I think it would be very disappointing if he survived because we spent 4 movies with the police trying to catch Hoffman and with everybody trying to catch Hoffman. And to undo that just seems kind of like a slap in the face to those previous movies. I don't really like when sequels undo something from the previous movie just for the sake of continuing the franchise. There is one scenario in which I am willing to accept Hoffman being alive, and that would be, we know that they discovered the bathroom sometime in between Saw 7 and Jigsaw, right? In Jigsaw, we see all of the inventions in Eleanor's studio, some of which were things that were exclusive to the nerve gas house or exclusive to the bathroom. So we know they discovered the house at some point. Maybe they discovered it right after Saw 7, and when they got in there, Hoffman was still locked up in the bathroom. If that's the case, then he would be in jail, and that would be an interesting way to bring him back into the fold. Not as an antagonist again, he's not back on the loose, and we're not undoing everything that we accomplished in the original Saw series, but maybe the characters are trying to catch Jigsaw, and they're like, all right, how do we get inside the head of one of these killers? And they go and talk to Hoffman in jail. So
kind of like a Silence of the Lambs thing. You've got the new police people going to visit him for information.
And we kind of know that he's not on the loose because in Spiral and in Jigsaw, I believe, maybe just in Spiral, we see in both. We see the inside of the police station in that city, and there's not like wanted posters for Hoffman. We don't see anybody we don't see like some special unit still investigating Hoffman. So it's not like they don't know what happened to him.
Exactly, because in Spiral, they say another Jigsaw copycat, so they know that Hoffman was a copycat, but they never say, oh, it could be Hoffman, because, he's still on the loose, he's still out there doing it. They know for sure he's not an option.
I mean, and it could be that another copycat refers to Nelson, who I don't think they know his identity yet. But yeah, if Hoffman was on the loose, then they would bring him up as a possible killer in Spiral.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you that I think, as you say, we know they found the bathroom. So it's either they found him dead or they found him alive. If they found him alive, then he's in prison. So in answering the question, what is Hoffman's fate? I think it's one of those two, isn't it? Either he's dead in the bathroom still, undiscovered, or alive in prison, discovered. And yeah, as far as been used in the next film.
Which would you prefer?
I don't know. I think it would be poetic if he was dead. I think that would be a better ending.
I do agree with that.
Do you think that he would deserve to survive?
No, I think he needs to be dead, because if he's still alive, even if he's in jail, it kind of takes away from the impact of the end of Saw 7, which is like the only good part of the movie.
I would agree. Yeah, it's the only reason I watched that trash pile. But yeah, I agree. I think the poetic ending would be that he was dead. Do you think that it would be a good thing to see in Saw 10, them address his ending, maybe just have it in a throwaway comment so we do know what happened to him?
That would be nice, because then people can finally shut up about it in my comments. How would you do that? Like, show his gravestone, or as they're trying to catch the new killer, they reference, well, Hoffman did this and he didn't survive, or something like that. Yeah,
I think basing it off of previous Saw films, I think it would be really nice if they just did it in a really natural way. You know, when Hoffman is given his award and they just pan past pictures of other cops who have died in the investigation, and when Strahm goes looking for information, he's browsing through folders that list potential Jigsaw victims. I think it would be nice if it was something like that, where Hoffman's name or picture just comes up in a file, case closed, or something like that.
That would be a good way to do it, because I think there's a lot of new Saw fans now who are mostly familiar with just Jigsaw and Spiral. And so it wouldn't be confusing for them to bring up this character that they don't really know, but it would be there for the OG fans. Which
again would fit in with Saw as a franchise, because it's one of those that rewards watching every single film, but I think you can also dip into some of them, like Jigsaw and Spiral, as a new fan. And if something goes over your head, then so be it. It doesn't alienate the audience. The question, what was Hoffman's fate? Do you think we've solved that for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at the actual circumstances of how he was locked up, the only ones to escape were Gordon, who he sawed his foot off, obviously, and Hoffman does not have a saw, so he can't do that. And then Eric Matthews crushed the bone in his foot and then slid it out that way. But also with Eric Matthews, I don't think the sliding door was closed. And with Hoffman, it is closed. So even if he got out of the shackle, it would be difficult to get out of the bathroom.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm pretty sure the door was left open. But also, bear in mind, Lawrence, the point of putting him in there was to finalise it. It was for him to be dead, to be punished. There was no lesson to be learnt, no option for him to escape, no tool to use to get out. It was, this is you, done, finished. So yeah, I'm assuming that door is locked.
What if we see the bathroom in Saw 10 and we see that Hoffman crushed his foot and he got out, we see his skeleton, his ankle is totally crushed and he got out of the shackle and his hands are just glued to the sliding door and his skeleton just dies like that.
I mean,
we know that he went out fighting, essentially.
I don't know if that's really funny or really dark.
Yeah,
but it kind of it fits for Hoffman, though, doesn't it? He's a fighter.
On the topic of that final scene, the other person involved was Dr. Gordon. What do you think he's up to in 2023?
The OG Lawrence Gordon. It's a funny one with Gordon because he's really the last man standing as far as Saw 7 goes. Obviously, we've had the introduction of others. But for me, with Lawrence, I feel like he's not one of Jigsaw's disciples, like Amanda, like Mark, who feels like he's actually got something to prove, feels like he is actually instigating the traps, creating them, seeing them through. He is more of a helper, more of an equal to Jigsaw. You know, he obviously helped him do all the surgery stuff and recommended doctors and things like that. But
what does John call him? Like his greatest asset?
His greatest asset. Yeah, exactly. And I think that means that, you know, because Jigsaw felt that Amanda still had lessons to learn later on, and Lawrence doesn't. I think he's done with that. So I don't think after Saw 7 he's continuing Jigsaw's work. I don't think that he would be creating traps and putting people in them. I think that, you know, his role is done when he took care of Mark Hoffman.
Yeah, I would agree that he's not like actively creating new traps. But I do kind of feel like he kind of cares about Jigsaw's legacy being preserved in the way that John wanted it to be. That's kind of why he tracks down Hoffman in the end, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I imagine he would be keeping an eye on things. He's probably aware of what happened over the course of Jigsaw and Spiral. And he's probably aware that there are new Jigsaw killers out there who are taking a different approach. Like with Logan Nelson, he has a different reason for punishing criminals. He wants to... What's his quote at the end? I speak for the dead.
I speak for the dead, yeah.
And then Shank is basically doing it for personal reasons. And I feel like Gordon would see that and take offense to that. Just the idea that there are other people kind of tarnishing the Jigsaw brand reputation. And maybe he's going to get involved in Saw X. My kind of dream situation, if not for Saw X, then maybe a future Saw sequel, or maybe Saw X is kind of the culmination of this saga. But you have these 3 different Jigsaw characters who all have different interpretations of what Jigsaw is supposed to be, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they're going to clash. And it would be very cool to see like a Jigsaw versus Jigsaw scenario. It's not really something that they've explored. I mean, they kind of have explored it with Gordon versus Hoffman. But it would almost be like a Jigsaw battle royale type of thing. Yeah. Which could be cool.
I'm picturing like a Royal Rumble in a wrestling ring. You know, they've all got their own entrance song and cape. I mean, you say that they explored it with Mark and Gordon, but so briefly. It was like a little taster, and it wasn't enough. It would be good to explore that more in a larger film. I think you've made a good point there, because that is another reason why he punishes Mark, not just because Jigsaw asked him to or John asked him to, but to preserve it. And as you say, I mean, Shanks and Logan have their own reasons. It's you know, I mean, Shanks is like more of a vendetta than anything. We know that Lawrence does keep tabs on people because he's at the support group regularly with the other victim survivors, and a lot of the victims go on to be assistants and disciples and things like that. So
do you think we could see the support group again?
I would like to, but I do wonder if too much time has passed to bring back survivors of the Saw Roman numeral films. Maybe, you know, ones of the more recent ones. I don't know if there would be hope, if that's too much reliance on people having rewatched the films recently.
Yeah, I think the characters that we saw originally in the support group, like if they haven't gotten over being a Jigsaw survivor by now, then there's no hope for them. I don't think continuing to do the support group 10 years later is probably going to be that beneficial. There is a character who was supposed to appear in Saw 7 in the support group who did not appear. So it would be interesting to see Daniel Matthews into the fold. But I just don't know if there's enough characters for the support group, because there aren't really any survivors. I mean, there aren't enough survivors in Jigsaw and Spiral. In Jigsaw, it's just Eleanor, right? She's the only survivor. Mm-hmm. And in Spiral, it's just Zeke.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be a small support group. Daniel, Eleanor, and Zeke, and also very much a gathering of misfits.
I mean, that would be an interesting one to see, wouldn't it? I'd love to know what happened to Daniel Matthews, because really it's quite a big impact that it's had on his life, because not only is he a survivor himself of a Jigsaw trap, but his dad lost his life to Jigsaw. So I think that as a character, he's more interesting and has much more of a deeper dynamic than a lot of the other survivors we've seen. So that would be quite interesting if they pulled that back.
Yeah, that would be, like, as a Saw fan, I feel like that would be interesting to see him as an adult. From a logistics standpoint, kind of like we talked about before, like there are a lot of new fans of Jigsaw and Spiral that probably don't know who he is, so I don't know if they would be willing to dig back into the lore like that. But you never know. We kind of saw a similar thing happen with the Scream franchise recently, where the Scream 2022 kind of reset the quota and introduced new characters. But this most recent one, Scream 6, Scream VI, as it's called, did have a lot of callbacks to the original series.
But it's still, that was able to do the balance of have the throwbacks whilst also having the new characters that people felt they'd latched onto. So perhaps if in Saw 10 they don't bring people back, maybe they will introduce a new generation of characters, and then if there's a one after that, a Saw 11, perhaps that's when they have the luxury to do more throwbacks, like Saw Scream 6 did.
Yeah, I mean, they could introduce Daniel as an adult, and to people that are newer to the franchise, it would be like introducing a new character, and to us, it would be introducing an old character. It would be kind of similar to how they handled Kirby in the last Scream.
So give him role enough that's just interesting in itself for new audiences, but it's a nice nostalgia nod for longer fans.
So do you think he would be a Jigsaw convert like Amanda, where she's now a believer, or do you think he would be more like what's the woman from the beginning of Saw 6? I can't remember her name. The woman who was in the pound of flesh trap.
Yeah, she cuts her arm off.
Her own arm, and now she gets handicapped parking at the damn mall.
At the damn mall, yeah. I can't remember her name. I just always remember her attitude. Well, I mean, I don't know, because Amanda did help Daniel in the trap. He has nothing against Amanda. And he did have a strained relationship with his dad. They didn't exactly get on. So, maybe he feels that he did learn something. Maybe he would go more down the route of Amanda than the damn mole woman, because maybe he could have seen them as a father figure, people who were invested in his life. I don't know. What do you think? I
kind of agree with that, especially because he was a kid when he went through that. And like, we've seen adults be converted to become followers of Jigsaw. And I feel like as a kid, he would be much more impressionable. So yeah, I kind of do feel like he would become a Jigsaw believer. And not just a kid, but a lost one, separated parents, getting in and out of trouble with the law, which is often a cry for attention. So yeah, I agree. Quite impressionable. Oh, I kind of want them to bring him back now. Just talking about it, it's actually a really exciting idea. Yeah, now that we're talking about it, it's more of I'm starting to see the possibilities a little bit more. Well, there is another survivor that we've not mentioned that I think would also be quite interesting, and that's Bobby Dagan. Oh, yeah. The writer. Obviously, he wrote the book. I can't remember the name of it. Survive. It's like an acronym. He's actually survived a trap now. He actually did it. So, right. I mean, what do you think Bobby Dagan's up to? Yeah, so I hope that he actually did write a book now that he's actually experienced it. I don't know if he's strong enough of a character to where I would want to see him, come back into the fold and do something significant. But I think it would just be a fun Easter egg to see, him on TV doing an interview for his actual Jigsaw Survivor book, or, they go and talk to him, trying to get information from him on what an actual Jigsaw Survivor went through. And we see that he actually wrote the book. Or maybe just the characters walk by a bookstore and you see his sequel book just on the shelf there or something. That's what I was thinking. Just walk past the bookshop and it's a bestseller, or like you said, just an interview. But I think it's too good of a story to not have at least a slight nod. The fact that you had someone pretending to be a survivor ending up being a survivor. I mean, the media would have a field day with that if they found out that it wasn't real. And we know, I don't know, do you think Bobby Dagan, because what he learned from Jigsaw was not to write the book when he hadn't actually experienced it. So now that he has experienced it, he should feel like he should write the book. I feel like that kind of stacks for me. Yeah, I mean, come on, the guy lost his friend, his publicist, his wife, the poor woman. Okay, so I've got a question for you. Something that has always niggled at me. When, at the end of Saw 7, Lawrence Gordon captures Mark Hoffman, he has 2 helpers with him. So who do you think is behind those pig masks? So there's kind of 2 answers to this. There's a commentary on Saw 7, I believe, where the director Kevin Grutert reveals who is actually under the pig masks, and it is like who is physically under the pig mask for filming. And it's the two guys from the love triangle trap from the beginning of that movie. But since those people were never unmasked in the movie, I feel like it's a good opportunity for them to kind of retcon that. And now, it could be anyone. They could have that tie into a future, a current character in Saw X, or like another survivor like Daniel Matthews. And like the idea of these guys that were introduced in Saw 7 being Gordon's helpers is just not that exciting or satisfying to me. I like the mystery of like, oh, this could be anyone. This could be, these people are yet to be unveiled, and this is something we should watch for. So I hope that they change that and have it revealed to be someone else if they do in fact bring back Gordon. So outside of the question of who's under those last two pig masks, there's also the Jigsaw rules website from Jigsaw, which was kind of like a fan site where people who didn't necessarily experience Jigsaw traps became followers of his philosophy and his teachings. So that kind of begs the question of like, well, who set up that website and who are the main players involved in that? I don't know if it was ever supposed to be a bigger plot line, but it's something that is brought up and then never addressed.
It is only a throwaway mention, isn't it? But it's supposed to be enough to make Eleanor look questionable. And I do wonder if that is an extension of the cult of Jigsaw, the people at the support group. The people who are under Lawrence Gordon's wing. So is it them that set it up, or is it just, some people who are fans of Jigsaw as a serial killer?
I think regardless of who set it up, it's an interesting idea that kind of excites me for like the power that the new Jigsaw could have in Saw 10. It kind of reminds me of Death Note, where people set up websites in honor of Kira, and they're people on the internet that are posting names, and it gives Kira more power because he has access to more information. And I wonder if a similar thing could happen with Jigsaw. But yeah, just the idea that the hive mind of the internet has a lot of power when it comes to collecting information. And I feel like that's also kind of relevant if they want to make a kind of a culturally relevant Saw movie, like they did with Saw 6, for example. There's a lot of again, we saw this with Scream, with the most recent Scream movies addressing like toxic internet culture and stuff. We could see the power of the internet have an effect on Jigsaw and how his teachings are spread as well.
I think you're right about them needing to, they always have, haven't they, tried to be relevant to the times, like you say, with Saw 6. I mean, that's the healthcare.
Yeah, some more than others.
One, right?
The healthcare one, as everyone calls it.
Yeah, the healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So they have done it before, they have made commentary, but I think to keep up to date, they probably would have to address that.
I feel like Spiral even kind of does that, like kind of making a statement about the police system and corruption and stuff like that.
Oh, very much so. That was very on the nose, wasn't it? So while Saw 7 left us with questions, which I think they did, whether they say they wrapped everything up or not, I think there's stuff still up in the air. I would then say that with the release of Jigsaw, that did nothing but bring more unanswered questions by the end of that film. And I don't know about you, but to me, the biggest question that is still just floating out there in the ether is, where is John Kramer's body? Because we know his grave was dug up and he wasn't in there. Logan had put in, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was somebody else. So we never find
Edgar
his
Munson,
body.
I think.
Edgar Munson.
No, that's the guy from Stranger Things. Edgar, I think it was Edgar, though.
Well, I can't remember his name either. You just keep making me think of Edgar Munson. Yeah. I don't even think that's Eddie Munson. That's Stranger Things.
I mean, that's the exciting thing about Jigsaw to me, is with Saw 7, with our unanswered Saw 7 questions, they're basically like oversights because that was supposed to be the end of the series. But with Jigsaw, it feels like there's a lot of stuff that was left open intentionally to be answered in other movies. And hopefully they actually follow through with some of those, unlike Star Wars.
Burn. Yeah, I think you're very generous with Saw 7 thinking that it was just an oversight. But yeah, I mean, I imagine when they made Jigsaw, they assumed there would be sequels to it that they could continue on with. And I don't know, I feel like with Tobin Bell being in Saw X, they're going to remind us that John Kramer is a thing. They're going to remind us that Jigsaw is a thing. And so I feel like they've got to address where his body is, right?
Right.
But I mean, I don't know, where do you think he is?
If I remember correctly, Logan Nelson had dug up his body in the middle of the night or something so he could switch it with that guy whose name we can't remember. So I think that with John Kramer in the past, we've seen he has a variety of different workshops that are like headquarters that he works out of. He worked at the mannequin factory on Stygian Street. He had his urban renewal project with the nerve gas house and stuff. And then he had the Gideon meatpacking plant. So I imagine that Logan Nelson also has a number of his own hideouts. Obviously, we've seen that he did his game in the old Tuck pig farm. And I'm guessing that John is stored at one of his other hideouts, if I had to guess. And he's probably... I imagine he's going to be doing more games in the future. It doesn't seem like punishing... I discovered this guy's name in one of my videos. Detective Halloran.
Oh, yeah. That rings a bell.
I don't think that punishing Detective Halloran was his end game. It seems like he very much had a mantra that he wanted to carry out his teachings for many people. So I imagine that he's going to still be out there doing games. Whether the police know about it or not, we don't know. But maybe John Kramer's body is going to be a part of one of those games.
He's going to have multiple locations. They always have a backup. I suppose if he's learned anything from John, it's having multiple locations. But also, he works in a morgue. So could he not have just bunged John Kramer's body in one of the freezers there under like a John Doe name?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess at that point, though, like the bodies at the morgue are usually like fresh, right?
I mean, I don't know from personal experience, but I imagine so. But don't they also have donated cadavers, for students to work on? Maybe,
but my point is, like, it's been at the time of Jigsaw, it's been, I think, 10 years, if I remember correctly, since Saw 7. So I imagine John Kramer would just be a skeleton at that point. It would be cool if they had the skeleton kind of hiding in plain sight in Saw X somewhere. Like maybe there's like a science teacher or something, and there's just like the skeleton in the front of the room, and it turns out to be John Kramer's skeleton. We find out later in the movie or something.
Yeah, and like where they cut his skull off, they've just attached it with like plasters or sticky tape, just put it back together.
Right. Yeah, like that's how they figure out that it's him.
Oh, I don't know if I like that idea. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a fan of John Kramer.
Well,
but
you feel bad for John Kramer?
I do. I'm not saying I'm a fan, but it's... No, actually, no, I don't feel bad for him. No, he killed Adam. Screw him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he can be a skeleton on display. Yeah, that's fine. You deserve it. You've kind of touched on two other questions that I have about Jigsaw, but the first one is Logan. What are your takes on him?
It seems like he's not active at the time of Spiral. Again, I'm going off memory, but I think Spiral takes place a little bit after Jigsaw, like a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. So he could be planning like another big game, or he could be doing stuff in secret. He could be doing stuff in another part of the country.
Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but nobody discovers that he's the Jigsaw of that film, do they? The only person that knows ends up dead. So he's not discovered, is he?
He's not discovered. There is one survivor, of course, and we don't really know what happens with her. And I feel like that leads into our next question, which is what happened with Eleanor? So at the end of Jigsaw, and this is like my number one thing that makes me excited for a sequel to Jigsaw, we see Eleanor trying to escape the pig farm, and she runs out and she sees this car and the headlights are flashing at her. We can't really see who's driving the car. And she has this look like almost of recognition, but also kind of concern when this person picks her up.
It's like a gut drop moment. Like she recognizes, but it's not a good thing.
So do you have any theories about who that could be?
Well, I hope that it's Lawrence Gordon. That's what I would love it to be.
That was my first thought. Yeah.
I would love it to be something like that, because we know the whole thing with Eleanor's character is that she is, a fangirl of Jigsaw and his traps and people involved. She's on the website. So if she recognises someone and looks concerned, perhaps it is someone to do with the Jigsaw traps and there's only a handful of the survivors.
But I don't know, would she recognize Gordon? Because the general public doesn't really know about Gordon.
But they know he's a survivor, so she'd know who he was, but she might not know.
That's true. Yeah.
In terms of him being a bad guy. But then would she look concerned? Probably not.
Maybe it's Bobby Dagan.
On his press tour.
Right.
It's his tour van.
He's the one person that she would definitely recognize because he's a celebrity.
Yeah. I feel like that probably wouldn't be as impressive as, as if it was Gordon, but...
no, that would be very weird if it was Bobby Dagan.
Yeah, funny but weird.
Yeah, I think Gordon is kind of the coolest answer. There was this thing in Spiral where after the first cop got killed and then Zeke goes to visit his family, the wife is talking about like a black SUV that came out that was outside their house, and then she said that her husband went out there and yelled at him and he went away and she never saw it again. And
right.
I don't remember, is that ever addressed again in Spiral?
No, it never comes up again. It could be something where a black van is driving in the background, or we see Shanks get out of it, but as far as I'm aware, nothing's actually verbally said or answered as to who it was.
So then when we went back and looked at that scene from Jigsaw, you can't really see what kind of car it is because the headlights are flashing straight at us, but it looks like it could be a black SUV.
Yeah, because we could only see it for a few seconds, couldn't we? But I'm pretty sure the height of it, the width of it, it's a van. It's an SUV, and it's a dark colour as well. It's either navy or black.
So would you rather see the person that picked up as Eleanor being a legacy character or a new character?
Okay, well, for me, I'm one of those people that doesn't mind the nostalgia nods. Like when people went really mad in Jurassic World when there was too many nods to Jurassic Park. I was there loving that. So I would be happy if it was a legacy character. For me personally, in terms of what would work better for the films, what would work better for the story, it would probably be better being a new character. So I'm kind of 50-50 on it.
I think I am leaning a little bit towards preferring that it would be a new character. Just because there's not like a perfect answer from the original Saw series where I would be like, oh, that would be so satisfying. I think Gordon comes the closest, and I wouldn't be upset if it was him. But again, like, would she really recognize Gordon? It's hard to say. I mean, maybe she would because she's such a big Jigsaw fan that maybe she would familiarize herself with the victims.
What about Jill Tuck's family pig farm? Do you think the police have found that? Do you think the police, because they will have been looking for Halloran, weren't they? So do you think they will have found that in the traps? It's
hard to say. I know I kind of think that they would find it pretty quickly because it was supposedly in Jigsaw. They said that it was still owned by Jill Tuck's family or whatever. So it wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be too difficult of a stretch to say, all right, Jigsaw or Jill Tuck was married to Jigsaw. This is a copycat Jigsaw thing. Let's look into their properties as possible locations. So it seems logical. But also the bathroom was part of a complex owned by John Kramer, and it took, 3 years for them to find that. I guess it probably at this time of Saw X, it will have been 3 years. So I'm going to guess, that they do find the pig farm. Because I wonder if they find that, if there's anything there to lead them on to Logan. Because I don't know, I feel like while I don't think Lawrence is out there doing traps, perhaps he is still maintaining and protecting the legacy. I feel like Logan's probably still active out there. I think he's probably still... Right, like he might find out about it first. Or you mean Lawrence is still active, right? No, I mean Lawrence would be protecting the legacy, not putting people in traps, but I feel like Logan would be. I think he's probably still doing his streak of Jigsaw killing. Yeah, I would agree with that. And what do you think about the line from Spiral where one of the police officers mentions, like, oh, this could be another Jigsaw copycat? Would we consider Hoffman to be a copycat or a disciple? And if we're considering him to just be a disciple, then Logan Nelson is the only copycat, in which case they do know about him. Or they may not know that it's him, but they know that there's a copycat. Do they know about when John did the traps that Logan's copying? Do the police know about those? I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but I do know that the human blender thing from John's first game is kind of public knowledge because Eleanor has the blueprints for those, and the blueprints are online.
Good point.
But it's not clear. I don't think it's clear if, from the police's point of view, if that was like a one-off trap or if that was part of a game that they know about. No, I don't know if they do know about it, because when we go to the pig farm in the present in Jigsaw, the last two survivors who are in the shotgun trap thing,
they're still there.
Like, we see them in the past, and then we like flash forward and see their skeletons, right? And they're still sitting there.
Because my thinking is they discover the bodies of the present traps, but how would they connect that to being a Jigsaw killer? Because if they don't know that it's a copy of another trap, they might not assume straight away that it's a Jigsaw killer, unless does he cut Jigsaw pieces out of the skin? I can't remember.
He does, yeah.
He does. Oh, so they're
because he puts him in Halloran's freezer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah. So they, at the end of Jigsaw, they believe that Halloran was the killer.
So maybe if they're referring to a copycat, they might be referring to Halloran.
Yeah.
They don't know it's Logan, I don't think.
Unless Logan has done more since then they would not suspect Logan, because I think it's kind of like case closed that Halloran was the killer. But
then I think Logan's still out there doing stuff, so that would put suspicion back on him. I think they'll think that Mark Hoffman is a copycat, because although they don't know that he was technically a disciple of John, they don't know the history and relationship between them. They know that Mark killed his sister's killer, copying John. So I think they will assume that he's a copycat rather than a disciple.
Do they never find out that Hoffman was a disciple?
I don't think they do. The evidence is based on how he killed his sister's killer, like the knife that he used, and then they decrypt the voice. But I don't think they have any evidence that he was doing it through John's orders.
I think they do kind of know, actually, because after the Saw 3/4 game at the pig farm, he's a survivor. And I believe at that point, Corbett Dunlin is also a survivor. He brings her out. He goes rogue after that. So they know that he was a survivor. So I think you just make the assumption that he became he started doing the Jigsaw stuff because he survived a trap, just like Amanda had.
I mean, they could, in Spiral, the police could know of multiple copycats because they say another copycat. So that doesn't make it just singular. Right. So they could be aware of Mark, assume it's Halloran, and maybe there's still Logan carrying on.
It'll make more sense like after Saw 10 when we kind of know what the police know a little bit more, hopefully.
Yeah, I'd really like it if they get back into doing much more of the cop side of the storyline. I feel like...
well, they did that in Spiral.
No, I know, but I was just thinking that. But actually, it wasn't the same style as the other Saw films. You know, you have much more of the trap and then much more of the cops, but also seeing the people instigating the traps. You follow Amanda, you follow John, you follow Mark, and in this one you don't, because Shanks is it. I'd like it to get back to where it's like more of a 50-50.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like in Spiral, it was kind of... It felt like Saw 5, but without the trap stuff, you know? I think that was my initial reaction of Spiral.
But I prefer Saw 5 to Spiral. I know not everyone likes Saw 5, but I like that one.
I like Saw 5.
Okay, so I suppose in terms of Spiral, the main question, or in my opinion, the main question is Shanks. Do we think he's still continuing punishing corrupt cops? Do you think he's still putting people in traps?
I think that one's actually kind of obvious because in Spiral, his whole goal was to recruit Zeke to work with him, essentially. So I don't know why he would be recruiting him if he wasn't planning on doing more stuff. I think he wanted to punish more police systems for being corrupt, and he wanted Zeke to be his right-hand man in that.
I would agree with that. Like I say, his whole thing is to have a vendetta against corrupt cops, but yeah, why would you go through all that process of trying to get him into your fold if you're not going to continue? It's just an interesting concept, isn't it, that if he's out there continuing and Logan's out there continuing, although
they're going to butt heads at some point.
Yeah, but then Shanks is only targeting cops. He's very singular vision, isn't he? Whereas Logan
also targeted a cop in Jigsaw. I don't think Logan's thing... was specifically on cops. I think he's just trying to avenge anyone who died.
Yeah, because the people in the trap, they weren't worthy. They were just regular people. The problem is, like with Logan, he left no one alive who knew he was Jigsaw, but Zeke knows that Shanks is Jigsaw. So what happens with that?
I mean, I guess it kind of depends what you think about what happened with Zeke as well. I know you have an interesting theory on that.
Yeah, I don't think we agree on this one. For some reason, I thought that Zeke would be arrested. I thought that Shanks had kind of set it up to that people would think that Zeke was involved, and I don't know, for some reason I took it as a negative ending for Zeke, like he's arrested or he loses his job or something like that. But you think differently, don't you?
That wasn't the thought that I have when I first saw it.
Yeah.
I just kind of assumed that the police would show up and Zeke would say, oh, he got away. And like they would be able to go back and prove that Zeke was not, didn't have any DNA at any of the crime scenes and it wasn't him. But I like, now that you bring it up, I kind of see that as a possibility that Zeke gets blamed for it, because how else does, Zeke is obviously going to tell everybody that Shank is Jigsaw. If Shank is to continue, then he'll either have to do it under a mask where he's no longer living a public life, or he actually gets people to believe that Zeke was responsible. But I feel like just like from a logistical standpoint, Chris Rock was like a big part of the interest in Spiral, and if they were to do a Spiral sequel, he would probably need to be a part of it, and there's not much he can do from jail.
I don't know. I mean, we've considered the idea that Hoffman could be in jail and play an integral part, so perhaps Zeke could do the same. Perhaps there's someone on the outside who's working with Zeke.
Cellmates.
Oh, Mark and Zeke, like the Odd Couple sitcom. Just
right.
them two ragging on each other. But what if someone outside was trying to help prove that Zeke was innocent and get him out? I don't know why I thought that things wouldn't end well for Zeke. I think it's because all the guns are pointed at him, and his dad has just been shot because they thought he was a bad cop. Because actually, didn't Shanks set his dad up to look guilty of some stuff? Because it's how Shanks gets his revenge on Zeke's dad, because he was a corrupt cop.
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe it's if they thought he'd done something wrong that Zeke was in on it as well. I think yours makes much more sense. There would be it would be easier to prove that Zeke didn't do anything because there would be no DNA there. But then also, if he said that Shanks was guilty, Shanks is dead. As far as they're aware, he's been killed.
In the eyes of the police, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he could continue to live underground, kind of like Hoffman did at the end there, and just conduct his games in secret. It would be more of a traditional Saw movie in that sense. The other interesting thing with Zeke, like possibly being in jail or possibly coming back and being a character again, is what's going on with Zeke's son. Because in Spiral, they really went out of their way to tell us that Zeke has a son, and there's that whole scene where he comes face to face with the wife. It's the ex-wife, I should say. It's the only scene in the movie where we really address that part of his life. And I think he's asking, like, aren't you supposed to be watching our son? And she says that she's with the sister, and he says, like, oh, so your sister gets to see him, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then the son doesn't really come up at all for the rest of Spiral. And it feels very much like something that is a setup for a storyline in the future. And I wonder if Zeke's relationship with his son is going to come into play in the next one, or possibly a future installment. Yeah,
because otherwise it's a really strange scene to shoehorn in there, isn't it? It's making it more of a family drama that never goes anywhere. Mm-hmm. But Zeke's relationship with his own dad is important. So
yeah, I mean, that could be it. It just like to highlight how Zeke has this strained relationship with his own dad, and this is carried over, and now he has the strained relationship with his son.
Yeah.
That, like, maybe that's the entire point, and that's why it's in there. But I don't know. To me, it kind of feels like the son is going to be a character.
What if we got a Zeke's son and Daniel Matthews team up? Like new generational.
Oh my God. Now we're dreaming too much.
No, just go with it. Trust me, go with it.
No, because Zeke's son would be a kid and Daniel Matthews would be an adult now.
Stop finding plot holes in my ideas.
I mean, they could still do it, but it would be definitely a stranger team up than if they were both kids.
Okay, so another question that I did wonder with Spiral is, do you think that Shanks had an apprentice helping him? I mean, some of the traps perhaps could use an extra body, and also bear in mind that when he joined the police force, this was under a false identity. So how was he able to do that? Do you think he had someone helping him?
My answer to this is probably not going to be that interesting. When I first saw the movie, I was kind of in agreement with you, to where, you know, you would think they would do like a background check and want to see his birth certificate. So I kind of thought there was someone inside the police force that helped him get that job in the first place. But then at the end of the day, like, his whole thing in Spiral, again, is to try to recruit Zeke. And if he already had an apprentice, does he really need to recruit Zeke? Is he just trying to grow his cult? I kind of feel like he's on his own at the beginning, and he's trying to get that additional person. It would be kind of like in the past sections of Jigsaw, where it starts off, it's just John, and he does his first game ever, and from that he recruits Logan Nelson. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like where Shank is in his journey, I think. He's just trying to recruit that first disciple. So I'm going to say that in Spiral he did not have one. Maybe by the time of the next movie he does have one. That's
a good point, actually, I hadn't thought of, because all of them have started from point zero, haven't they? They've started from nothing and then grown over time. I suppose thinking about some of the traps, what does he do? Hoist some bodies into bathtubs, and, you know, he could use a pulley system, I guess, to put the other ones up, like in the subway trap and the glass one.
I mean, John was, he was in his 50s, I believe, but he was not in great condition, we'll say, at the time that he did his first trap in the prequel stuff in Jigsaw. And, Shank is a police officer. He's going to have gone through some physical training as well.
I mean, yeah, I suppose that's a point that we've not covered, is that John was an older guy. He was ill. His health got progressively worse. And as his health got progressively worse, that's how he gained more and more apprentices to help him do the things, whereas Logan and Shanks are both young, healthy men. I mean, with Logan especially, he was in the military, he's medically trained, he gained engineering skills from John. He's like the full package.
Yeah, Logan is really interesting. A lot of people didn't like Jigsaw when it first came out, and I thought it was okay. I wasn't a huge fan of them kind of like reusing the twist from Saw 2. But what really made me excited with that movie was like, what's going to happen now? Because I think the new characters are really cool. Like, everybody likes Eleanor, it seems like. And with Logan, he has all those skills that you just mentioned. He's going to be like a super Jigsaw. He's going to be more capable than any of the Jigsaws we've seen so far. So I'm really excited to hopefully see him back.
Yeah, I mean, I think people like Eleanor because she's kind of the surrogate us. She's the surrogate fangirl. But with Logan, I love the idea of him being like the super Jigsaw, like this Terminator, just like undefeatable.
Yeah.
But also, I think for me personally, I feel like he has one up on the others as well, because Logan doesn't look guilty almost. He looks, very innocent, whereas Mark Hoffman just looks dodgy. Even back in Saw 3, before he was even designed to be the bad guy, he still looked dodgy in that. I think he still looks questionable. You still wanted to know what that guy's up to.
But apparently Lee Winnell did not put him in there to be a villain based on his tweets.
Yeah, apparently so. I think when Lee wrote him, he was just a small cameo. He was only in that one scene with the guy with he's in the trap with the rings on him. Like in the jaw with
the classroom,
yeah, the classroom one, and Hoffman's just in that one scene, and I think he was just meant to be like a sign of respect for Greg Hoffman, who'd passed after Saw 2. I don't even think he had the name Mark at that point. I think he was just called Hoffman, but yeah, he still looks dodgy.
It's very weird though how Lee Winnell like doesn't acknowledge him now. I think in his tweet he said like, oh, people always ask me like, oh, what do you think of so and so with Hoffman? And he said, like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it's like, no, like, who Hoffman is at least. You put the character in Saw. You wrote Saw 3. You created this character. It's like, you may have not intended for him to become a villain, but you should know who he is.
You're right. Yeah, he wrote Hoffman. But I mean, if he didn't give him the name Mark, maybe he doesn't know who they're referencing there. And if he hasn't seen the films...
Everybody calls him Hoffman. Nobody calls him... Oh, you're the only one who calls him Mark. Okay.
Yeah, me and Mark, Marky Boy, we're first name basis.
Marky Mark.
Marky Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little bit overprotective of Winnell, but I feel like if you haven't seen the films and, I think he sent that tweet out in, 2015?
You think he hasn't watched... I don't remember when it was, but it was not that long ago.
Exactly. And
you
wrote
think he
Hoffman.
hasn't watched Saws 4 through 7?
I don't know.
Like, we've seen pictures at the premieres and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe he's so busy that he goes to the premiere and then he doesn't actually stick around for the movie, but...
He just leaves out the back door. I don't know. I mean, I know him and James have had basically no creative input past Saw 3. They thought that would be the last one, even though they're listed as executive producers. That doesn't mean anything. They've not been involved in it. But I suppose out of curiosity, you would probably watch them. And like you said, he's at the premiere, and
it sounds like he's just being salty about them continuing the series against his when he had ended it.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest with you, him and James thought that they had ended it with the first one. They didn't think there would be any more. And then the producer said, yep, no, we're going to do more. We're going to make more money from it. And then it just continued and continued. And if it was your brainchild, if it was your baby and other people were continuing it, wouldn't you be a little bit salty about it?
I mean, I would at least be curious enough to watch and acknowledge the sequels. Like, even if you want to say, like, okay, I saw the sequels and they were trash, then I think that's fair. But, like, to just either not watch them or just pretend that they don't exist is a little bit weird.
He's not saying the films don't exist. He's saying Mark Hoffman doesn't exist.
No, theoretically, he's pretending that he never watched them.
I mean, maybe he didn't. Maybe he did just attend the premiere.
But he's still, like, even if you just attended the premiere and you never watched the movie, like, you kind of have to know what they're about. He would have heard at some point, which, I mean, I guess that's what that tweet is about, is like people asking him about it and him not knowing. But I feel like as one of the executive producers of these movies, which I'm pretty sure he is, that he would at least have like some idea, like, okay, this one's gonna be about Hoffman being the villain.
And also bear in mind, there's that picture of him at the premiere or the screening of Saw 3D where he's posing with Carrie Elwes, and he's good friends with Carrie, and you might have the conversation of, oh, you're in the film as Lawrence Gordon again, what are you doing? Well, it's funny because I put this guy called Mark Hoffman who's been Jigsaw in the bathroom where you were. So
I wonder if we can go back to like any of those premiere photos and see if there's any pictures or videos of him hanging out with Costas.
Not from what I've seen.
The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I've not seen him.
Oh, well, you would know because you've stalked all of his every picture ever taken of him. So
I don't know what you mean.
So I guess there's only one question that we have unanswered now.
Yeah, what's that?
The name of that guy that got his body switched with John Kramer.
Oh, God, yeah. Eddie Munson.
Yeah. Let's look. Oh, no, it is Edgar Munson. I was right.
No way.
Never should have doubted me, Sarah. Never should have. Actually, I think I doubted myself.
Yeah.
Never should have doubted myself.
How rude.
I just wonder... when they made Stranger Things, were they Saw fans? Did they have that in mind?
Well, you think Eddie's short for Edgar?
Oh, it must be.
Well, there you go. When you do things you missed in Stranger Things, you've got your link to Saw. Can't believe it was Edgar Munson after all.
Never should have doubted me. Well, on that note, you better start editing this video so you can get it out before the trailer makes everything that we said in this video irrelevant.
Obsolete. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me, Zach, to try and answer these unanswered questions from the Saw films. Honestly, since we did our payment episode last year, people who have just been requesting constantly, when are we going to do our next collab? So hopefully we will have made a few of my subscribers happy today.
So I'm allowed to go get food now, right?
No, you can't.
Why not? I thought this was the arrangement.
No, this is payback for last year. I get to work you like a donkey now. Yes, you can go and get food now.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. It's been a lot of fun revisiting the Saw franchise. It's got me like reinvigorated. My excitement for Saw X is reinvigorated.
Me too. I'm really excited now. I hope that we've kind of maybe got one or two things right, but who knows? But no, you're very welcome on the channel anytime. This was really fun.
Bye. I'm going to get food. Bye.
If you're a fan of Saw, then don't forget to check out my 2-part deep dive into the first film. I'll leave a link to the playlist at the end of the episode. And if you haven't already, then don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any further Saw content. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.